Hello, I'm going to demonstrate a method I devised earlier today for creating the effect of a tubular cast-off on a knit to purl to rib. This method uses a grafting method. It is Kitchener stitch. If you've ever grafted a toe, you'll be able to do this. The only difference between this and grafting a toe is in the way that we set up the stitches before we do the graft. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to place the knit stitches that are facing me in this rib here on one needle, and I'm going to place all the purl stitches onto another needle, and then those two stitches together, they will be like the toe of a sock, half around each from the toe of a sock. So we'll start with that first of all. I'm going to put all these knit stitches, in fact I'm going to use the other end of this needle that they're on a long circular needle. So I'm going to put all the knit stitches onto this needle, and then behind that I'm going to hold the needle for the purl stitches. So here I go, purls onto the back needle and knits onto the front needle, and I'm going to go all the way along the row, separating them that way. Knits onto the front needle, purls onto the back needle. And there we have it. Now luckily I'm working on circular needles because I'm going to pull those both along the cable to the other end of the needle where I've got the yarn from the end of the row that was just worked. I've placed the yarn already onto a darning needle ready for doing the graft. You need to leave approximately 3 times the yarn to the length of approximately 3 times the length of your row should be sufficient, and maybe a little bit extra for the tail. Now can you see that the way this is set up now with these two rows of stitches, all the knit stitches here are on this front needle and all the purl stitches are on the needle behind it, but because of the way that knitting works, all those purl stitches, when viewed from behind, are actually knit stitches. So it is like the toe of a sock. We're going to be joining 2 rows of knit stitches with a Kitchener graft, so it's going to end up, it's exactly the same as a standard Kitchener graft because we're joining stocking stitch to stocking stitch. Basically that's how it looks now that we've done that setup. In a Kitchener graft you need to set up. We're going to start by, first of all, we take the needle through the first stitch on the front needle purlwise, and then we take it through the first stitch on the back needle knitwise. I think you can see me doing that there, and we want the yarn to carry below the needle, so I'm just making sure that that stays below there instead of it coming over the top of the needles while working. So that's them set up ready, and then the Kitchener chant goes this way. You knit off, purl on the front needle, so that means you enter the stitch, the first stitch on the front needle knitwise and drop it from the needle. That's the knit off. And then the purl on is that you enter the next stitch on the front needle purlwise with the darning needle, and you're purling on, you leave it on the needle and then just pull the yarn through, pull it snug. And then we're going to go to the stitches at the back needle, and it's the opposite. On this needle we purl off and knit on. That means that we enter the first stitch purlwise with the darning needle as though we're going to purl it and pull it all the way through, and then we drop that off, that's purl off, and then we enter the next stitch on the rear needle knitwise. We take the darning needle through it as though we were going to knit it, and it's knit on, so we leave that stitch on the needle. So I'm just going to go along the row repeating those instructions and showing you. So on the front needle, always knit off, purl on, and always after those two movements I pull the yarn through to make things nice and snug, and then go to the back needle. Don't pull it too tight though, we want some, it shouldn't be too tight. So purl off, knit on the back needle. Can you see I'm keeping the yarn that I'm working with below the needles? I'm not letting it pass over the top of either of these needles, it's always passing below them. And then to the front needle, knit off, purl on, and then to the back needle, carrying the yarn below, purl off, knit on, and then to the front needle, knit off, purl on. Excuse all the activity in the background, that's my husband, who's going to be in a lot of trouble after this broadcast. And then to the back needle, purl off, sorry, knit on, to the front needle, knit off, purl on, to the back needle, purl off, knit on, to the front needle, knit off, purl on, to the back needle, purl off, knit on, to the front needle, knit off, purl on, to the back needle, purl off, knit on, to the front needle, knit off, purl on, to the back needle, purl off, knit on, to the front needle, knit off, purl on, that's the last stitch now on the front needle, to the back needle, purl off, knit on, and then finally we go purl off on the front, knit off on the front needle, that's the final stitch, and the final stitch on the back needle is purl off. And there we have it, we're done, and that's how it looked. A nice neat finish for a 2x2 rib. Now sometimes after I've finished doing a Kitchener, I'll go along and I'll tidy up some of the stitches. Can you see that there is quite loose? So I'll pull through some of the tension from that, the slackness from that, into a neighbouring stitch. I would go along afterwards just tidying things up that way, pulling through any slackness into neighbouring stitches. But I think that's a very neat finish for a knit 2 purl 2 rib, instead of having a chain cast off along the top. Thank you very much.